Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 357, 358, and 359. The general zombies are down in a flash. Oars feels like an adventure. Blazing Knight Sanji kicked down the fake wedding. And a clear history, Sanji's stolen dream. In these episodes, well, Luffy is proving to be just as unmanageable as I could have hoped in zombie form. And Sanji, it turns out, wanted that invisible fruit, the clear fruit, for the exact same reasons. Nude girls. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to the One Piece crew for commissioning this episode. How are you guys all doing? I had a bit of a vent session before starting, so, sorry about that. But if you're listening, you missed the vent session, and feel free to pause and vent for a second, and I'm listening in spirit, I promise. So these episodes, you guys, I gotta talk about the Sanji thing right out of the gate, right? Like, I do. Because it's, I actually said something like, I think, that anytime we're dealing with, like, the invisible man, there's always you could, like, sneak up on naked women thing. And it turns out that Sanji was, like, harboring a secret hope that he could get the clear fruit as well. And he has this, like, monologue where he's explaining how Absalom stole his dream. And he is trying to make it sound like he wanted it for real altruistic reasons, for the good of the world. And then every time he starts to talk, the words nude girls interrupt the flow of speech and reveal his actual intent and what he really dreamed about. Because, look, I'm not saying that there's nothing you could do with invisibility to make the world a better place. Like, I'm sure there are things you could do. But it is a really tricky power to utilize in that way. And so when you're thinking about, like, I want this specifically because I thought of a million ways to use it, I was sort of like, what do you mean? So once he blurts out nude girls, I was like, okay, this all makes sense now. And the fact that he turns out to be, like, we know he's a creep in his way, but he has never felt like exactly that kind of creep. I'm a little disappointed, but I also have to confess that it's a pretty funny bit. Like, there's for those who are not aware of Reductress, it's basically like a feminist The Onion. And they had a headline one time that was, woman sets aside her feminist viewpoints for 30 minutes to enjoy television show. Which is genuinely, like, what you have to do a lot of the time is you've just got to shut off the critical part of your brain in order to let yourself enjoy a thing occasionally. And in this instance, if I decide to just look past the issues of consent and violating privacy and whatnot, if we're just going to dance right past that, the fact that Sanji was harboring a secret dream of getting this fruit for himself, and this is something that he blames Absalom for, is pretty good. But also the fact that he is out here to, like, come at Absalom because of what Absalom is doing to Nami with this sanctimonious sort of energy, and then finding out that he would have probably been doing the same things in a bigger sense, not that Sanji would necessarily carry a woman away to try and forcefully marry her. I don't think he would. But the thing is about this kind of power, which is a story of the Invisible Man, is that you first get this power and you're just like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then you get high on the fact that nobody can do jack shit to you. And thus, part of me worries that Sanji, were he able to get his hands on that fruit, would have devolved into becoming this type of person eventually, perhaps. And I don't like that thought, and I don't want to believe it. But I don't think it's out of the question. Which, in the end, when Sanji is like, you know what? I actually am glad that I didn't get it. What I was hoping was that he was going to say something like that. Like, I see what it did to you, and I don't want to experience that. But sadly, no. His conclusion is, I can peep just fine the way I am. It's such a shame, you guys, that I didn't watch this years and years ago, because without the context that bothers me so much about this, that moment would have been so funny. You know what I mean? Like, I can tell when I'm like, that joke hits, even though now it really doesn't. But, that was almost like really good. And so this is just one of those sections where I'm like, I don't know how you update this, how you make this better today and still manage to keep it funny, but I will just address the fact that I can understand why people writing this who do not appreciate the concept of consent or, violating privacy would find it funny. I get it. And it just fell flat for me, but I really wish it hadn't, because I could just, I can almost grasp it. I can almost enjoy it, really enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that is, I really wanted to talk about that immediately, but I've got to back up a little bit and talk about the zombie generals are down in a flash, which is the first of these 3 episodes. So when we pick this one back up, we are with Usopp in that room with Perona. And she attempts a quadruple negative attack. And all of her old animals are hanging around, waiting to see him get taken down. And he stumbles and he almost falls, but he doesn't quite. And then everybody looks around and realizes Usopp has robbed the negative ghosts of their will to live. And they are folded over and shaking and sad. You guys, this is... I just love this so much. I love it so much. The last episode, with the fact that he wasn't affected by it, was already so good. But the fact that he is such a pessimist that the negativity ghosts can't handle him is truly genius. I love it. 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 I really, really do. Like, I think especially lately, after having done a 15-minute long vent session before recording, everybody's got so much bad shit happening to them lately that the feeling of being able to harness your pessimism and your negativity as a weapon just feels like the one way to maybe make some forward progress when you've been feeling otherwise like you are screwed and you don't have any weapons left in your arsenal because you're real tired. So this is just delightful to me, and even better, at least this is something that I am really curious about, like what other people's experience were if they're not watching the dub. But for me, the dub has some really excellent dialogue where the animals are looking at him and one of them says, "What the hell is this guy? The patron saint of pessimism or something?" And Usopp says, "Not anyone in this entire world can defeat me in negativity." And one of the animals responds, "What a terrible source of self-esteem." Oh my God. I just yeah. You can't beat me. I am number one at hating everything and wanting to die and thinking I'm a worm. I mean, is this not a mood or what? Like, come on. And then Usopp starts to do this weird laugh. And I'm like watching him like, why is he? Because he's sort of hopping when he's laughing. And I thought the camera was just pulling away from him. And then all of a sudden, one of them says, "That's weird. He seems smaller all of a sudden." And another zombie says, "Oh, I think it's because he's backing away." And he was really hoping that they wouldn't notice that and he'd be able to just bail. But now he has to do special attack Salt Star. So he uses his Salt Star. I was hoping that he got all of them. He did not. He got like 5 of them. And then Perona, who, by the way, collapsed as well when he like got the ghosts, she was affected as well. So she gets up and he says, "Stay away from me, all of you, Salt Star." And she yells, "It's Salt, watch out." And the zombies all put their hands over their mouths. And Usopp runs away yelling, "Oh, why'd I have to call out Salt Star?" Which is the thing that I find really weird about this. And I understand the need for it in the show. Like, if you're going to try and establish the certain like techniques that people have to fight, and you want to have a moment where they get to see a new technique that they haven't before, and they recognize it's about to be a new technique because they've heard the names of the others and this is an unfamiliar name, and you want that drama. I get having people say things out loud, but I wish some of it were more like under their breath. And it depends on the character. Some characters do kind of do it like that, where they just sort of whisper to themselves and it is not about the other person. But with Usopp in particular, I have felt for a long time like if you're a prop-based fighter, screaming out what you're about to use as your weapon doesn't feel like a smart way to go. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I just was like thinking, why you're yelling Salt Star, and he yelled it the first time and they didn't cover their mouths. So I guess they needed Perona to like mention it or else they wouldn't have noticed. But it did occur to me, like, he's screaming Salt Star and nobody seems to be. So I was glad that that wound up coming up and being something that counted against him. Let's see, Kratos. Oh, but yeah, that moment when Sanji becomes worse Straw Hat. Yeah. Gabriella, not going to lie, I was expecting more rage. You know, Gabriella, I just don't have it in me today. Maybe on another day, you know, I would have been able to like muster some more. I think that like the shower scene with Nami really just took the cake in such a way that even with this, with the reveal that Sanji is such a creep, at least it didn't involve a hugely sexualized scene with Nami or another woman where they're being like ogled by the camera, so to speak. I always say the camera, even though I recognize this is animated, so that's not really how this works, but you get what I mean. I think the fact that they sort of like used Nami the way they did in that scene made it so much worse for me. So at least this, it's just like a concept of how awful Sanji is, but we don't have to watch it. So it doesn't quite hit as bad for me. Usopp is my role model this arc, making depression his superpower. Yeah, amen. So, and I love that Usopp is really frustrated at the fact that these zombies keep interfering, because he is like getting used to the fact that maybe he isn't useless. You know, he's finally able to do something to protect the rest of the team and buy them some time so that they can like run off. And he is proud of himself for the first time with this team in a while. Not to say like that he hasn't done good things for them before, but frankly, the times that he has been in in a position to really do a lot, he has been playing the role of Sniper King. And so it feels a little bit different to me when he is just himself. And that's not in the role of Sniper King. Pretty much everybody knew who he was other than Luffy and Chopper, but he was still attempting to hide. Whether or not everyone else knew who he was, he was still like feeling such shame that he was literally covering his face because he felt so weird about being around everybody else. And now the team has made up, he has apologized, and the whole thing is a really different energy. So the fact that he gets to like throw himself in front of them for a change instead of the other way around, I am just really like, I hope that things wind up working out, because the zombies are chasing him, and he thought he had his chance to really like, you know, make an impression, and he eventually gets them out of the way in a really delightful scene where he fires a pepper star and gets them all to sneeze and like take their hands off of their mouths, and then fires salt into their mouths again. So that in the end, we just have him and Perona and what is his name? Kukusa? I'm trying to remember the name of the bear. But, there's something very funny as well about the fact that the person that he is up against, Perona, by the time Usopp is like coming after her, she wants no parts of this. She is like, Kumasi. Thank you, Demian. Oh yeah, Gabriella says it also works so well considering the mental state he was in last arc. This is him being the only one able to do this, and it's special. Yeah, agree. But yeah, Kumasi is like chasing him, and he is chasing Perona, but Perona doesn't want to be fighting anymore. She's done. And literally is asking Kumasi to like get Usopp away from her. She isn't even really, I don't even feel like the way she's talking to Kumasi is like, you've got to kill him. It's more like, can't you distract him long enough that I can get out of here and I don't have to deal with him anymore, which, you know, that just feels very different. And the fact that Usopp tends to be the one that runs away freaking out and tends to be the one that reaches a certain point in a fight and is just like, okay, well, I'm done. So can we just wrap now? Because I personally feel like I don't want to do this anymore. And he's dealing with somebody who's doing the same thing. I really do enjoy that. And I also really like the fact that, that Kumasi is like chasing Usopp toward Perona. So he's running from Kumasi, but there's a vibe like maybe Usopp may not have continued to pursue this whole fight if he weren't being forced into chasing Perona almost against his will. And I don't really think that's true. I feel like he probably would have felt an obligation to finish things with Perona. But if she was like, I don't want to fight anymore, I'm leaving, I could see him having a moment of like, oh, well, good. Maybe we don't have to fight. Maybe we're done. And I think that probably in the end, he would be like, well, I just can't, she's going to go and wreak havoc somewhere else. I have to stop her. But now Kumasi is like, and also the fact that Perona wants Kumasi to like get Usopp away from her, but is literally chasing Usopp toward her, which is extremely frustrating for her. This whole thing is just honestly actually pretty funny. So finally, he manages to take Kumasi down. It takes a little bit. Like Kumasi, he thinks that he got him down, and this bear just like rises up again. After Usopp says something about like, wow, for a stuffed bear, you wouldn't really think he'd be able to pack that much of a punch. And when Kumasi stands up, he's so mad, but Usopp is like, that was a compliment. What the hell? But in the very end of like the third episode, Perona is literally like floating outside of the building, like right outside a window, so that he can't catch up to her exactly. He still has the weapons, of course, that are like ranged weapons, so he could get her from where he's at. But the whole, like, the way that it ends is a sort of standoff moment where she makes a threat and he kind of freaks out because it really seems like she is about to completely unleash. And I am wondering if there is anything that she can do, because, she's flying. That's all well and good. That's very intimidating. Flying is not a small superpower. But you've tried a lot of your tricks already, and they haven't had all that much of an effect. What have you got left up your sleeve at this point? We'll see. So, all right, let's go to Frankie and Zoro. We have a little bit of the two of them kind of talking about the situation and the fact that Usopp is covering for them. And we jump pretty quickly from there into Brook, who is fighting his shadow zombie. And they have this like sword fight, one of those ones where it's just like the frantic moving around of a blade, but there's no real technique and there's nothing that you can follow as a viewer to like be impressed by, if that makes sense. Like, it's not to say that I am not impressed, because I get the impression that this is actually like kind of a badass fight, but you don't see any sword strokes. You just see a bunch of like hanging cuts in midair as they're moving really quickly. And eventually, I felt so bad, Brook gets like knocked on his ass, very literally. And his skull is all broken. He's missing teeth. He looks like shit, frankly. And this dude is like, just lay down and die with some dignity. But Brook won't do it. He stands up. Well, no, he sits up. He does not stand up. And is kind of doing the Captain America, I could do this all day. Ryoma, for his part, is so fixated on taking away Brooks's fro. I just really resent. That's the only way I can say this. I really resent how much Ryuma wants to humiliate Brook. It's one thing just wanting to beat him, which I already am kind of like, but why, dude? Why do you care so much? I already kind of feel that way. But setting that aside, why do you want so much to make him feel terrible? It's just so spiteful and mean. And y'all know, I just can't get down with that. There are times where being petty feels like very satisfying when it is revenge for something that has been done. But this dude hasn't got a bone to pick. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm not that sorry, actually. I lie to you. He has a bone to pick. That's going to be a joke that like Brooke says himself at one point, right? I feel like. Anyway. But I don't see why Ryuma is so... I almost did it again. Dead set. I just don't get why he is after Brooke the way he is, except for, I suppose, knowing that Brooke was like the original body for this shadow. But even so, you know, I mentioned before that I'm a little bit unsure about what he understands regarding killing Brooke, because he kills Brooke and he's basically killing himself, as far as I understand it. I have mentioned that he seems like very different than the other zombies in some ways, but I think that if he kills Brooke, the shadow just disappears and then he himself drops dead also, and I'm not sure that he knows that's what happens. So yeah, the fact that he is just going after him in this like really intense way. He then says, "Would you like me to sever with my arrow notch slash?" And Brooke says, "Shut up, you don't know the first thing about that technique. You have no right to even speak its name." And I was like, ooh, why, what, like, it's one thing to just be like, don't use my technique against me or whatever. It's another thing to be that kind of protective of it where it's, you are being blasphemous. You know, that felt like the accusation here. And he says, the quick draw attack that I was most skilled at when I was with my crew was called Requiem Le Banderole. However, my comrades in arms renamed it in regard to my own sword fighting technique. They called it 3-verse humming, arrow notch slash. Even if you share my personality and my techniques, you've forgotten my memories and all the feelings attached to them, which means that you will not use that name. And this has me really curious, because the fact that he has mentioned using this technique, and I may be wrong about this, you guys, but I was assuming that it was a technique. You know what? Then it isn't. It isn't. Because I was going to say, I was assuming it was a technique linked to his devil fruit, but if his crew renamed it, he was alive when he used it. So it's not a devil fruit technique. And thus I was going to be like, can Ryuma actually even use it? Because from what I've seen, the shadows don't carry devil fruit powers, but that's not the case here. That's not even the thing. Okay, never mind. I got myself all twisted around, but once I stopped to think about it, I realized. So Ryuma says, you know, this will be your last chance to take down the fake. So if you're going to do it, you better get up. And Brooke does manage to actually stand up. He is in bad shape, though. This poor dude. Like, it's a really, I'm sure as an animator, a difficult thing to get across that a skeleton is in bad shape. But they've managed it. He really looks like shit. So he's walking forward, and there's like a whole moment where it looks like that's it. He's dead. And I was upset. We have more flashbacks to him with his friends, to him with Laboon, to the ship, everything like that. And then all of a sudden, we have Ryuma lifting his blade, and he's like, all right, I think I'm gonna go ahead and take this afro. And then Frankie and Zoro step in. They appear to rescue Brooke from being shaved, from getting a haircut. And Ryuma is like, how dare you interfere with my battle? And at first, he goes after Frankie. He doesn't even see Zoro. And Zoro steps between them and says, "Are you the legendary samurai that slayed a dragon in ancient times?" And I really expected there to be, like, the way that he says this. Am I meant to remember this? The dragon slaying samurai? Has Zoro mentioned this before? It's just like the way he says it, it felt like a callback. But this is such a long running show, and I definitely lose track of stuff. So this is something that I didn't remember, and I'm just curious if it's been mentioned or if this is sort of a new thing being brought up, because he says something like, "I've been really hoping to meet you." And I was like, "You have?" Because that's news to me. Between this and finding out that, like, secretly Sanji was hoping for the clear fruit this whole time, everybody's got these, like, secret dreams that I didn't know about. Kratos says, "Nope, first time." Okay, noted. But yeah, Zoro he's facing off with this guy, and he definitely has a moment where he is like, that sword, is that my imagination? Or is this supposed to be, like, one of the legendary swords? And Ryuma is like, "Oh, you've got a really good eye. Yeah, you're right, it is." And while this is all happening, I did really enjoy this part. Frankie is still, like, holding Brooke, right? Like, cradling him, basically, while Brooke is on the floor. And Frankie says something to Brooke about how, like, if your pride will allow it, I think is the way he phrases it, Zoro would like to get your shadow back for you. And I liked the way he put it, because, there would be people who would just be like, "No, this is something I must do myself." Brooke does not have that compunction. Brooke is immediately like, "Yes, oh my God, please get my shadow back. Oh my God, I'm begging you, please, please, thank you." And eventually Zoro has to tell him to shut the fuck up. But the fact that Brooke is so, the pride thing, just not a factor. He doesn't care. And yeah, so this is indeed one of the 21 legendary swords of the highest grade, a famed black blade with a reverse waved temper line, known as the Clear Autumn Wind, Shushui. Consider yourself fortunate to cast your eyes on it. Autumn Wind is actually a super dope name that I like a lot. I recognize that it's probably corny. Like, the thing about being corny, you guys, is how very subjective that is. And how, like, high your tolerance is. Corniness really is in the eye of the beholder, and there are times where you're going to see something as incredibly corny and another person will see it as cool, or you will see it as corny and so does the other person, but they like it despite themselves, even though they understand that really it is kind of corny, but that's kind of part of its charm. And that's kind of where I'm at with this, where Autumn Wind, I recognize, isn't a badass name really, but I really like it a lot. I really do. And also the fact that it's got, like, this weird red rippling in the blade, and something about that, thinking about, like, fall leaves and red leaves. I don't know if that's, like, a purposeful link, but I'm assuming that is. I am really looking forward to seeing more of this blade and what it can do, because what we get is Zoro saying, "All right, well, I'm going to fight you for this sword and I'm going to take it." And I am certain he is going to eventually end up with this blade. I love, though, this is a moment that made me actually LOL, was after Zoro says, "I'm going to fight you and beat you and take your sword," Brooke from the ground exclaims like a high school girl who has just seen the Beatles and just, "You're so cool." And I just don't get tired of anybody being impressed by their friends into that level. It's the sort of thing that I almost envy at this point in my life. They get so pumped and like caught up in the moment when Zoro or Luffy or anybody is like really doing a badass thing and can just step back and be like, "This is amazing." And I wish that I still had the ability to like let go of my attachment to irony and, you know, self-reference and whatever, to be able to just really go, "Oh my God, you're so cool," and mean it, you know? I love that for them. And Brooke, I don't know if, you know, you are the same type of gullible exactly that Chopper is, but Chopper's like the only other one who really is a consistent cheerleader for everybody and seems to buy into the persona people are trying to get everybody else to believe. And, you know, there's value to being able to see through that, of course, but there is something very sweet about there being a person who doesn't have that, like, I wasn't going to even say skepticism, cynicism, I guess, really is what it is. And I like that we have these characters, and I wouldn't mind if Brooke was just as eager to believe as Chopper is with everybody, you know? Anyway, so yeah, that is the way that things sort of wrap up there for a moment. I'm sort of, you know, having to jump around a lot because there are so many other things going on. But I'm going to go over to Luffy for a moment because he's over here with fucking Moria? Is that his name? Like the Mines of Moria? I just realized that that's a thing. Oh, Demian is in the chat, says, "It is a callback, but to one of Oda's earlier mangas, the living Ryuma was a character in that. And he did slay a dragon in that manga. Oh, it was a story called Monsters in a collection of one-shots called Wanted." Okay. I feel like you guys have mentioned Wanted to me before. All right. Thank you, Demian. But, so Luffy with Moria. This dude has figured out how to like employ his own shadow as a bodyguard. And that already is just really awesome. But then it turns out like he can do all sorts of shit with that shadow. And the shadow is like a solid. It's able to split itself into parts. At one point, Luffy does Gatling, like Gum Gatling, and the shadow splits into a bunch of little circles and just absorbs the attack like tons of tiny little shields. And I just really thought that was unfair, you know, the fact that he can do that with them. And then after he's like done his Gatling attack and it doesn't work, he's sort of just standing there kind of yelling about it, like that's not fair. And then all of a sudden, all the little like dark circles that are his shadow, they turn into bats and just sprout wings and begin to attack him, which for the record, Luffy does not handle particularly well. He really is irritated by these fucking bats, which I can't blame him for. But the thing that he's fighting for is Moria has promised, well, I say promised, that's not really true, but he basically tells Luffy if you want all these zombies to be called off, you're going to have to beat me and get me to order a retreat, essentially. And I really enjoy when he's like, how do you expect to accomplish what you need to? And Luffy just says, obviously, by kicking your ass. So he says, if you're able to beat me, then all right, I'll issue but what Luffy winds up doing, there's a moment later where he's like, it's like he's on the parallel bars, at the Olympics, and he is holding on to the railing and swings his way up and gets Moria himself, not the Shadow, like in the face with a kick, which Moria says is cheating. And I say having your Shadow fight for you is cheating. Okay, Moria? It's just as much cheating as Luffy attacking that way, which is to say it's not cheating. It's just using the tools that you have the way you can. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that's the way it always is with bullies. You do the exact same thing they did, and all of a sudden it's not okay anymore. And it's just they move goalposts like crazy. So I want to talk about the Luffy zombie for a minute here. Because one thing that's happening in this first episode with everybody all over the island is they are experiencing these tremors and nobody is sure why it's happening. At one point, Zoro says something like, what? It's probably just an earthquake. And I'm like, Zoro, baby, how do you think that's possible? You're not on land. Like, you are, but like, this is not the kind of thing that would happen the way you're talking about. And eventually, a bunch of zombies come and report to Moria. Or no, they come and report to Absalom. My bad. That 900 has gone and like grabbed the rudder of the ship and is like fucking around with it. And Absalom is like, wait, what? Why? Like, isn't he on our side? I don't understand why he would be doing this. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys saw how little he gives a shit about sides. I don't know why you're surprised by this. And like, the way that Luffy is like pulling on this chain, I mean, the speed of it is really disruptive. And Absalom is pissed because the way it's shaking everything, he's trying to kiss Nami and he can't like get to her because the shaking of the island is causing her to like shift exactly out of his way every time. Which is really funny because, the thing that I said last episode, which was like, this is invalid either way. And they're acting like if he does manage to land a kiss, then she can't get out of this marriage. Of course she can. But the show was like, no, but really, we have to find a way that he can't kiss her. And so they just decide to have the entire place shake her out of his path, which feels like, I guess that's a solution, but it feels like a little bit more than we need here. So Absalom, in response to what Luffy is doing, he sends all the zombie generals to deal with Luffy. And Luffy turns, and I'm saying Luffy, I'm sorry, the Luffy zombie, Oars. I just hate the name Oars so much, but it's fine. We'll go with it. So they're talking about how they have to bring him down. One of them says, start with the feet. And all of a sudden, Oars like vanishes from the spot. And everybody's like, where the hell did he go? What's happening? And somebody else says, well, he's humongous. There's nowhere that he can hide. And as they're standing there looking around, we see Oars plummeting toward the earth. And he says, now gum gum, though it's not rubber, Gatling. And he just does the Gatling attack without turning his arms into rubber, which, as it turns out, is just as effective when you are 900 feet tall and weigh 1,000,000 pounds. So yeah, I thought it was just going to be that he basically landed on all of them, you know, like a giant anvil, and just squashed them. But no, he spread his attack out and he got all of them. And it's like, he really laid absolutely every single one of them out. And when one of the like only zombies left standing who witnessed this goes back and tells Absalom, he's like, what the fuck? He took out, those are our strongest guys. There is no way. And the zombie's like, I don't know what to tell you. That is what happened. I saw it. You could go check if you would like, but they have been squashed. And throughout all of this, by the way, Nami is still unconscious. So that's rough. But yeah, isn't Oars supposed to be on our side? Why is he revolting against us? Zombies are made to be obedient. It's in their nature. We can't let him keep up all this rampaging. I'm over here kind of delighted by this. And it turns out that Moria, when he's talking to Luffy, is, because I was like, why is he so unconcerned about this? And it turns out that like all zombies retain a shadow of the personality of the person they came from up to a point. And then like as time passes, it begins to go away. And I don't know why, you guys, but that was like chilling to me. The fact that it's not just like, it doesn't just stay, that there's a sort of time limit. And if no matter how strong the personality, eventually they will just become an obedient, like, automaton, you know, automaton. I think it's automaton is the way you say that. That bummed me out so bad. I just had this lovely mental image of this like huge giant creature that was going to make all their lives hell forever. And it turns out that according to Moria, they just have to kind of wait it out and then he'll be manageable. Now, I say this, but I also do want to point out, waiting it out when this guy is causing the kind of damage he isn't as easy as it sounds. Like, I am not sure exactly how much damage Moria was prepared for, but it isn't, like, it's looking like this whole ship is potentially gonna get fucked up by this dude, and once he falls back into line, it may be that he's caused so much damage it's not really gonna do any good, or, you know what I'm saying? So, I don't know whether or not the fact that it loses its personality is going to save them. But I really didn't like that prospect and finding out that this is a temporary thing. So, okay. I've jumped around a lot. I'm going to continue doing that. You guys know what I'm talking about. The fight with the little bats. I really do like that moment a lot. So, all right, let's go to Zoro because he is fighting Ryuma. I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything here, you guys, because the way that the story like jumps from one person to another, and fucking Oars at one point is just angry that everybody is ruining his fun, as he puts it, and he apparently, like, what he's been trying to do is get to the ocean. I was so disappointed, y'all. I really thought he was going to swallow the water. There's really, if we're being honest, there is no way that you swim in salt water and don't swallow some salt. Like, that's just an impossible thing to do. If you like lick your lips, if you open your mouth at all, it's just going to happen. So I thought for sure we were just going to see that as a matter of course. But what we find out, first of all, he doesn't, I don't know if it's just that Oars doesn't know how to swim because he just doesn't know how to swim. He sinks. He says something like, "This sucks, I'm drowning," which I don't know why, but that fucking cracked me up. That's not because of the devil fruit, right? Because he can't do any of the other devil fruit stuff. So I'm assuming that he is not vulnerable to the swimming thing that devil fruit will do to you. But either way, he starts to sink, and I think one of the other zombies like rescues him and is like, "Dude, what the fuck? You know that you can't swallow salt." And I was like, "Does he?" Because he says, like, "Is it your first day?" And I'm like, "It literally is, yes." And then he says, "At your size, a little won't do any harm, but you've got to be careful." And I was disgusted. I was so annoyed, you guys. I really thought that was it. We had it wrapped up. He was going to swallow this water. End of. No. It turns out that there has to be a certain amount that he swallows. When I tell you I was so annoyed, I am serious, you guys. What the fuck? Anyway. So the whole thing with Oars is so weird, and I really don't know where we're going with this, because the fact that he has like Luffy's personality, but he doesn't remember any of Luffy's friends. You know, there was no moment where Oars sees them and is like, "Oh, hey guys," or "I wonder why they're familiar to me." There was none of that. And yet, he has no real interest in fighting unless people stop him from doing fun stuff, it doesn't seem. This is all such a weird collection of traits to put into this one creature. I really don't know what we're doing here. I am going to I'm going to go back really quick to the thing with Sanji and Absalom, because I didn't talk too much about the actual fighting, and I should, because it's actually really funny. The whole thing with Sanji, and this was a new way to do this that I liked. So we know that his Achilles heel, every time that he has been fighting anybody, it kept being a beautiful woman, or in the case of Mr. 2, I think, that Mr. 2 could turn into what looked like Nami and get Sanji completely off his guard because he thinks it's Nami and so he can't hurt her and whatever. And it's very dumb, but it was funny in its way. What we get this time, since it actually is Nami, we get instead him saying, "What? Who is this? Is this a princess?" And it turns out he just keeps on getting confused about Nami being who she is and having to remind himself that it's just Nami. And I think it's supposed to be that because she's like dressed up in this gown and everything, that she just looks like a different person maybe, or just looks more beautiful even than usual. But it causes him to stop and stare at her a few times and completely forget about the fight. And Absalom does the same thing. And then eventually they have a little like moment where they are commiserating on how hot she is and how good she looks in white. I think it's Absalom that says something like the only thing that looks better. No, I think it's Sanji. The only thing that looks better in white is rice. Something like that. Genuinely, like, I really cannot approve. I can't of them like reaching a point with each other where they can be buds because they're both objectifying this girl against her will. So I'm just gonna say that right out of the gate that like I don't like it. But there is a part of me that kind of enjoyed the fact that when Sanji starts to fight, he is intermittently yelling at Absalom, but then also like kind of doing the same things as Absalom to the point where there's, I think, the priest and somebody else who are both zombies, I'm pretty sure, are watching this fight and talking about how Sanji is just like Absalom. And Absalom calls Sanji a jealous pervert. And the priest just yells, "Takes one to know one." Takes one to know one was one of those insults when I was in like 5th grade that felt so devastating. Like there was nothing to be said. Once somebody says takes one to know one, that was the end of it. They just completely destroyed you and you may as well just get your toys and go home. But him and Absalom start fighting, and Absalom is like really bewildered at the fact that Sanji is able to kick him into the wall like a couple times. And eventually he really takes him down that way. And he says, "I now pronounce you man and wall," which is the worst fucking line in the world. But Absalom was assembled out of, as he puts it, like 600 pounds of different animal parts. So this dude is like humongous. He did not look that big to me. When he says he's 600 pounds, I was like, what? Where? But he thinks that he is going to be more than a match for any of the human beings that try to come up against him, and is startled at the fact that Sanji lays him on his ass so easily. And Sanji does it a couple of times, and then finally, all of a sudden, he's like, "I'm going to need you to get rid of those bazookas that you have strapped to your arms." And I'm like, excuse me? Because what Absalom kept saying was that he was going to use like a technique, and it turns out he's basically like faking it. And he has these things that he's been hiding, and apparently his little henchman didn't know he was doing this either. And I think the bit is supposed to be that Sanji knows the kind of fruit because he wanted it for himself, and knows that the power Absalom keeps using isn't part of what that fruit can do. Correct me if I'm wrong. And that's why he is aware that what he's doing isn't actually like a power. But yeah, the whole thing, it's just such a weird moment. And Sanji gives him a couple of chances to do it, to obey and take them off. Oh no, here they are. I see him now. And he gets so angry that he says, "Or I'm gonna explode." And these guys are like watching him as he does, and they say out loud, "He just did. He exploded." And again, you guys, I was taking it as literally like he was on fire in the last section. And then I changed my mind and I was like, I'm pretty sure it's meant to be metaphorical. But then they say here, "He just did." And now I'm back to thinking like, oh wait, is it literal? Is it supposed to be that he actually is on fire? I am not entirely clear on this, and I'm not sure if it's supposed to be clear. It may just be that because I think Florian said something like you could take it either way. But I really, really want to know what's supposed to be canon here, because I can't tell. And oh my God, I love Absalom telling him, that's why you have this grudge against me, because of the fruit. That is the most petty thing I've ever heard. And both of the zombies off to the side just like nod very seriously and say, that's the word, petty. Like they're really reprimanding Sanji in this scene. Oh, you know what, you guys? I'm looking at this, and I was saying that Absalom was like faking having this power. But these bazookas are like not hidden. They're on the outside of his jacket. Was he wearing another jacket before? Like, wait a second. I'm all confused. Because there's like a second earlier. No, maybe they were. I thought that it was supposed to be that he was like faking a thing. But because the straps are dark brown and his jacket is this like navy blue, it might be black. So it blends in a lot. And I didn't even really see that he was wearing them on the outside. So now I'm thinking I completely misinterpreted what was supposed to be happening here. I thought that Absalom had been pretending. No, he had them hidden, right? Because he says something like, how could he know about that? I'm sorry, guys. It's been a bit of a week. So forgive me if I got this all wrong and mixed up. But suffice to say, Sanji has to like pick Nami up and figure out how to fight with her while he's holding her and keep her away from harm, because he's super worried about her getting hit by like the crossfire, and Absalom knows that, so he's using it to his advantage, and at one point just fucking drives a sword right through Sanji's back, to which I was like, you use swords? I didn't see a sword. That feels unfair. I wasn't aware that we had weapons going on here. You were told to take off your bazookas, and now you just pull a sword out. But eventually Sanji shoots him into the wall, and that is the end of that. And as for actual Luffy, he is still in the middle of this fight with like Moria's shadow. That is not resolved. And the third episode ends with Usopp following Perona out the window, or not following her, but getting to the window and seeing her there. And that I've already talked about. So sorry I had to jump around so much, but oh, Demian says, there's a bunch of chat that I missed here. Remember that Luffy also doesn't know how to swim even before his devil root. He didn't know how. Oh, didn't he? Oh, I didn't remember that. Florian says he made the clear like invisible. Oh, so just the bazooka. Oh, okay. So that's why I was so confused. Okay, I see. He made the fucking bazooka invisible. Got it. Demian says, remember in his lobby, Sanji did his Diable Jamba. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Where he turned his leg red hot with friction. When someone asked Oda in a Q&A how that doesn't burn, Oda says while his leg burns hot, his heart burns hotter. So I think this is actual literal fire. Okay. Interesting. I do not remember that though. Forgive me. There's been a lot happening, so I did not remember that. But okay, I like that. I wanted him to have like a fire thing because that felt appropriate somehow. And I also really like the look of him with his hair floating when he's got the fire surrounding him. Especially with the cigarette, for some reason, the fact that he's like smoking literally in the midst of fire, it's very funny. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me and for bearing with me as I vented because of things. Appreciate you all so much and looking forward to next week. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Unspoiled Network podcast.